My name is Krista G. Mays, and I am the same age I was when everything finally stopped making sense. The crash didn't feel real at first. It felt like a mistake the universe would immediately correct, like one of those moments where you blink and everything snaps back into place. Jonah and I were driving home from the movie theater, sunlight pouring through the windshield, the kind of afternoon that tricks you into believing nothing bad can happen. He was talking nonstop about the movie, quoting lines out of order, laughing at his own jokes, his legs swinging slightly because they still didn't quite reach the floor. I remember glancing over at him and smiling, thinking how rare it felt lately to be this calm. Then there was a sound that didn't belong in that kind of day. Not a screech, not a warning, just an explosion of metal and glass and pressure, like the air itself had been punched out of us. The world spun sideways so fast my brain couldn't keep up. When the car finally stopped moving, everything went quiet in that strange, muffled way it does after something violent. The airbag had gone off. My chest burned. My left side wouldn't move the way I told it to. Jonah was crying, loud and sharp, but conscious, and the sound of his voice grounded me more than anything else. I kept saying his name over and over, like if I stopped, he might disappear. Through the shattered windshield, I could see the white truck that hit us, crumpled at an angle it shouldn't be at. The driver stumbled out, reeking of beer, shouting nonsense that didn't connect to anything. He actually tried to walk away. A stranger yelled at him to sit down. Someone else called 911. At the hospital, the fluorescent lights made everything feel harsher than it already was. They checked Jonah first. A sprain, cuts, one nasty gash above his eyebrow that needed stitches. When he winced, I felt it everywhere. For me, bruised ribs, a deep ache in my leg, nothing broken, they said, like that meant something. Alive, but shaken. That was the phrase they kept using. When they finally left us alone in the room, Jonah drifting in and out of sleep beside me with an IV dripping slowly, I picked up my phone. My hands were shaking so badly I had to type the message twice. I didn't write a paragraph. I didn't explain every detail. I wrote the simplest truth I could manage. We're in the hospital. Drunk driver hit us. Alive, but shaken. I sent it to the family group chat and waited. At first, I told myself it was fine. It was early afternoon. People were busy. Someone would see it in a minute. Someone would reply with, "Are you okay?" or "Where are you?" or "How's Jonah?" I didn't need everyone. I just needed one. Minutes passed, then an hour, then two. I checked the chat again. The message had gone through. Red receipts dotted the screen. They'd seen it. Every one of them. And still, nothing came back. Then I remembered what day it was. My niece's birthday brunch. 11 on the 11th. Rachel had talked about it for weeks. The rooftop place downtown, the pink balloons, the matching outfits. I'd been invited. I'd said no because I worked that morning and promised Jonah a movie afterward. I'd even dropped off a gift 2 days earlier so no one could say I didn't care. Still, I thought, surely someone would step away. Surely my mom would glance at her phone and excuse herself. Surely my dad, who panicked if anyone so much as coughed, would call. 3 hours later, Jonah asleep beside me, I opened Instagram without thinking. The first photo hit like a physical blow. A long table covered in mimosas and decorations, pink balloons, my dad wearing a paper crown, grinning. My mom holding my niece in a selfie, Rachel raising a glass, cousins smiling, everyone tagged, everyone clearly on their phones, story after story after story. Not one mention of us. I scrolled, numb. There was a video of my dad dancing badly, people laughing. A group shot with gold balloons. Someone wrote, "Best birthday ever." And beneath it all, the quiet certainty that every single person there had seen my message and decided it didn't require a response. We stayed overnight for observation. I didn't say much. I kept checking the chat like it might suddenly change its mind. It didn't. By the next afternoon, they discharged us. Jonah and I took a cab home, sore and exhausted. I made soup, turned on cartoons, pretended this was just another day. No one called. On the third day, my phone started vibrating like it was trying to escape the table. 48 missed calls, all from one person. My dad. No voicemails. Just one message sent at 6:13 p.m. Answer now. We need you. I stared at it so long, Jonah asked if everything was okay. I don't even remember what I said. I just called back. Some part of me still expected concern, an apology, a delayed reaction that explained everything. Instead, my dad's voice came through sharp and impatient. He didn't ask how we were, didn't ask about Jonah. He went straight into it. HOA fees overdue, tires needed replacing, Rachel needed help with a deposit for a school trip. He said it all like it was urgent, like this was the real emergency. Then he said, "It's not that much. You always help, always help." He kept talking about stress and pressure and how Rachel couldn't afford to disappoint her daughter. The same daughter who'd been sipping mocktails on a rooftop while my son got stitches. When I didn't answer, he added, "It's not like you're struggling. You're always doing fine." That's the last things I remember clearly. Jonah told me later I fainted. One second I was standing in the kitchen, the next I was on the floor, my phone buzzing somewhere out of reach. When I opened my eyes, Jonah was above me, terrified, holding a glass of water with both hands like he was afraid he'd drop it. I didn't cry. I couldn't. I felt hollow, like something inside me had finally emptied out after years of being quietly drained. Later that night, I opened the family chat again and scrolled past my own ignored message. Photos, jokes, videos, everyone laughing, everyone present, everyone choosing not to see us. I showed Jonah. He asked if maybe they didn't believe me. I told him I wasn't sure what they believed anymore. 2 days later, Rachel messaged me like nothing had happened. Asked if I could watch the girls Saturday night. Said she was exhausted from party planning. No mention of the accident. No how's Jonah. Just same time as usual. The next morning, my mom sent me a photo of her utility bill. No text. Just the bill. I stared at it for a long time and realized something quietly devastating. This was the only way they ever reached out anymore, when they needed something, when I was useful. That afternoon, I told Jonah I needed to go talk to them in person. I expected resistance. Instead, he looked at me and said, "You don't have to if you don't want to." I told him I did, because if I didn't say it out loud, it would keep sitting in my chest like a weight I couldn't set down. He asked if he could come. So that Saturday, instead of babysitting, we drove to my parents' house. And I had no idea that once I walked through that door, there would be no way back to who I used to be. The moment Jonah and I pulled into my parents' driveway, something in my stomach tightened. It wasn't panic or anger exactly, more like the feeling you get when you already know the ending of a conversation, but still walk into it hoping you're wrong. Jonah sat quietly in the passenger seat, his hands folded in his lap, staring straight ahead. I asked if he wanted to wait in the car. He shook his head without looking at me. My mom opened the door before I could knock. She didn't smile. She didn't say hi. Her eyes flicked to Jonah's face for half a second, then she turned and walked back into the house like we were already expected to follow. We stepped inside without being invited. My dad was in his recliner, the TV on low, some sports channel murmuring in the background. He didn't stand up. He didn't even turn his head all the way toward me. He just said, flat and impatient, "So did you bring it or not?" I stood there, still holding Jonah's hand, the words not registering right away. "Bring what?" I asked, even though a part of me already knew. "The money," he said. "You got the text." That was it. No how are you, no how's Jonah. No acknowledgement that 3 days earlier we'd been sitting in a hospital room with my son's face stitched and bruised. Just a follow-up on a demand. I told him I didn't come with money. I told him I came because I didn't understand how they could read the message I sent from the hospital and not reply. I said I didn't expect them to drop everything, but I didn't expect nothing. I told them how it felt to sit there watching photos of Brunch roll in while Jonah slept under fluorescent lights with a bandage taped to his forehead. My mom finally sat down across from me and crossed her legs, the way she did when she was settling in to explain why I was wrong. "We saw the message, she said. But Krista, you made it sound a lot worse than it really was." I felt something hot rise up in my chest. "You think it wasn't bad enough?" I asked. She shrugged. "We've seen worse. You were both home the next day. You're fine. If it had been serious, someone would have called us directly." My dad cut in without missing a beat. "And anyway, it was Olivia's birthday. Rachel worked really hard to put that together. You can't expect everyone to drop everything over a fender bender." A fender bender. The words landed heavier than yelling would have. Like he'd reduced the sound of metal folding, the smell of beer, the look on Jonah's face when the car stopped spinning, into something minor enough to dismiss. I told them it wasn't just about the accident. It was the silence, the way they carried on like we didn't exist, the way they celebrated while I was wiping blood off my son's cheek. I told them if the roles were reversed, if Rachel had been in the ER with her girls, I'd have been there without hesitation. Rachel walked in from the kitchen with a glass of wine then, like she'd been waiting for her cue. "You always make everything about you," she said casually. "I was in the hospital," I said. "And now you're not," she replied, already bored. Jonah squeezed my hand harder. I looked down at him, then back at them, and felt something finally settle into place. I told them I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't keep being the one who gave and got silence or guilt in return. I said I was done pretending this was a two-way relationship. My dad scoffed. "So you're going to punish us now over nothing?" My mom sighed. "You always overreact." Rachel laughed softly. "She'll be back next week, same as always. Wait until she needs help with something." Jonah tugged at my hand and whispered, "Please, can we go?" We left without another word. I didn't slam the door. I didn't shout. I just walked out and let it close behind me, the sound dull and final. When we got home, I opened my banking app and started cutting them off. Internet, electric, phone plan. I canceled the monthly auto transfer I'd set up years ago when my dad had surgery and Rachel had just divorced her first husband. The first call came the next day. My mom asking if I'd accidentally canceled something. Then Rachel asking if I could still babysit Saturday. I didn't answer. Later that week, my dad texted to say the electric bill was due and their card had bounced. I ignored it. The silence that followed wasn't like the silence in the hospital. This one was tight and angry and temporary. I knew they'd be back. They always came back when they wanted something. I just didn't know how far they'd go to try to get it. For almost 2 weeks after that, I ignored everything. Every message framed as a reminder. Every just checking in that somehow always ended with a bill attached. My mom sent photos instead of words, a power bill, a medicine cabinet with a few bottles pushed forward like evidence. My dad sent screenshots of his checking account balance with a sad face emoji, as if that turned responsibility into an emergency I was obligated to fix. Rachel alternated between sarcasm and manipulation, sometimes in the same message, like it was a reflex she didn't even think about anymore. I didn't reply. Not because I was trying to be dramatic, but because I was finally tired enough to stop explaining myself to people who had never listened. Jonah noticed, before I did, how much quieter the house felt. Not peaceful yet, but different. Less bracing. One night, while he was doing homework at the table, he looked up and asked, "Are they mad at you?" I said probably. He nodded, like that confirmed something he'd already suspected. "They don't sound worried about us," he said. I didn't know how to answer that without breaking something open, so I just said, "I know." It was a Thursday when Rachel showed up again. I'd worked a long shift, stopped at the store, and was thinking about nothing more complicated than taking my shoes off. She was sitting on my front porch when I pulled up, her daughters beside her, both glued to their tablets like they were waiting for pickup at school. She stood when she saw me and smiled, like this was normal. "Can you watch them for a bit?" she said. "Something came up. Emergency." I told her no, calmly, clearly. I said I wasn't available, that she couldn't just show up without calling, that I hadn't agreed to anything. She didn't argue. She didn't raise her voice. She just shrugged, turned around, got back in her car, and drove away. She left her kids sitting on my porch. I stood there with my keys still in my hand, watching her taillights disappear like she'd just dropped off a package. One of the girls finally looked up and asked if I had fruit snacks. I let them inside. I made dinner. I turned on a movie. I texted Rachel once. I did not agree to this. Do not do this again. She didn't reply. She came back at 9:12 p.m. No knock. Just rang the bell, grabbed their coats, said, "Thanks, I owe you one," and walked away like nothing had happened. No apology, no explanation, not even a glance in my direction. That night, Jonah was quiet. He read in his room for a while, then came out and sat next to me on the couch. After a few minutes, he asked, "Would you ever leave me somewhere like that?" "No," I said immediately. He nodded, like the answer mattered more than he wanted to admit. "I don't want to be like them," he said. Ever. The next morning, I got an email from the electric company. Not mine, my parents'. Apparently, I was still listed as a secondary contact on their account, something I'd forgotten completely. The subject line was in bold red letters. Final shut-off notice. I stared at it, then closed it. I wasn't going to rescue them from something they'd chosen to create. Later that day, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer. Almost. "Krista, it's Aunt Lorraine," the voice said. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Tell you what?" I asked. "The accident." The hospital, everything. She sounded unsettled. Your mom said it was nothing, said you were being dramatic again. But the neighbor mentioned something and it didn't sit right, so I called. I didn't know what to say. I'd spent so long assuming everyone had already chosen a side that I hadn't considered someone might just not know. Lorraine kept talking, asking how Jonah was, if we needed anything. She sounded like someone who'd been waiting for a reason to reach out. They've always put Rachel on a pedestal, she said quietly. You've been the fallback for years. It's not your job anymore. That evening, she invited us to dinner. No pressure, she said. Just food and company. Jonah was hesitant until I mentioned she had a dog and a big backyard. Then he was all in. Lorraine's house was small and warm and unremarkable in the best way. No tension, no waiting for a favor to be requested. We ate spaghetti and garlic bread. Jonah played catch with the dog while Lorraine asked me about work, about how I was really doing. Not once did she mention money. Not once did she ask me to fix anything. On the drive home, Jonah said, "They're different. They actually like us." I realized then how low the bar had been for so long. The day after dinner at Aunt Lorraine's, I woke up with a feeling I hadn't had in a long time. Stillness. Not the empty kind that comes after something breaks, but the kind that settles in when a weight finally lifts and your body doesn't know yet that it's allowed to rest. Jonah moved through the apartment quietly, humming to himself while he got ready for school, and I realized I hadn't heard that sound in weeks. Silence, when it comes to people like my family, never lasts. By Monday morning, the messages started again. My mom sent a photo of her medicine cabinet with 3 bottles pushed to the front and wrote, "Running low, can you grab these?" My dad texted, "Mortgage past due, let me know." Rachel sent a voice memo that opened with a sigh and the words, "Look, I know you're still being weird, but can you watch the girls this weekend or not?" Not one of them asked how Jonah was. Not one of them mentioned the accident, the hospital, the ignored message that still sat unread in the group chat. All they wanted to know was what I could still do for them. That was the currency, my usefulness. I didn't reply. I made breakfast. I took Jonah to school. I worked a double shift. When I got home, I watered the plants on our balcony and ignored my phone like it was something dangerous I'd learned to step around. It took exactly 5 days before someone lost their patience. Rachel showed up again. This time she wasn't pretending. Her arms were crossed, her face tight, the anger real and simmering instead of sarcastic. I stepped outside and told her I wasn't in the mood. "You don't get to do this," she said. "You don't get to just disappear." I said nothing. "Mom and Dad are barely holding it together," she went on. "Olivia cries because she thinks you hate her. Now I'm the bad guy because you decided to have some kind of meltdown." "I almost lost my son," I said calmly. She didn't blink. "You didn't, so stop acting like you did. Everyone's going through something. You just turned it into a show." I asked her what she actually wanted from me. "I want my sister back," she said. "The one who used to care. The one who didn't make things difficult." I looked at her for a long moment and then said, "You don't miss me. You miss the things I did for you." She didn't answer. She just left, the same way she always did, without apology or change. 2 days later, I got a call at work from the property manager in my parents' neighborhood. My dad had listed me as a secondary guarantor on the HOA account without telling me. The balance was overdue, nearly $1,800. When I texted my dad about it, he replied, "I didn't think you'd mind. You always cover it." That was the moment it finally clicked. They weren't trying to hurt me. They didn't hate me. They just didn't see me. I wasn't a person to them. I was a system, a backup, a solution that had never failed before. That night, while Jonah did his homework, I quietly removed myself from every account I could find. Utilities, HOA, emergency contacts, pharmacy lists, anything that had my name attached as a just in case. I didn't announce it. I didn't threaten. I just disappeared from the infrastructure of their lives. They noticed immediately. My dad left a voicemail. "You're really doing this to your family." Rachel texted, "Hope you're proud. When Mom gets sick again, don't bother showing up." I didn't reply. Instead, that weekend, Jonah and I went back to Lorraine's. We grilled burgers. Jonah helped her husband change the oil in the car. We watched old movies and drank hot cocoa. At one point, Lorraine handed Jonah a sweater that used to belong to her son when he was his age. He put it on without hesitation, like it belonged to him already. On the way home, Jonah asked, "Can we come here for Thanksgiving?" "You sure?" I asked. He nodded. "It's quieter here. I like quiet now." That was when I understood how much all of it had affected him. Not just the crash, but the way my family drained us and called it normal. Lorraine handed me an envelope as we were leaving. Inside was a handwritten note. No one gets to decide your worth but you. I see you. So does Jonah. For the first time, I let someone care without waiting for the cost. 2 days before Thanksgiving, the family group chat lit up again. Rachel wrote first. Dinner at Mom and Dad's at 4 p.m. Krista, you're still doing the pumpkin pie, right? A second message followed from my mom. Don't forget the whipped cream this time. The kids were disappointed last year. No greeting. No question about whether we were coming. No acknowledgement of the hospital, the silence, Jonah's stitches, or the weeks of pressure that followed. Just expectation, delivered like a routine reminder. I stared at the screen for a long time. It was almost impressive how easily they erased everything that didn't serve them. In their version of reality, nothing had happened. Or if it had, it was already forgiven without ever being addressed. I didn't answer. I didn't open the chat again. I didn't bake a pie. On Thanksgiving morning, Jonah and I got in the car and drove to Aunt Lorraine's. The house smelled like turkey and sweet potatoes, the kind with the marshmallows slightly burned on top. The table wasn't styled for photos. No centerpieces, no matching napkins, just food and people moving around the kitchen asking if we were hungry yet. Lorraine's daughter pulled out a box of old ornaments and asked Jonah to help her hang them on the tree. He beamed like he'd been given a job that mattered. Halfway through dinner, I checked my phone out of habit. My mom had posted a photo of their table, everyone seated, candles lit. A minute later, Rachel sent a message. So you're really not coming? Not even a text? Wow. Another followed. You could have at least sent the pie. I turned my phone face down and slid it into my bag. That night, driving home, Jonah asked quietly, Do you think they'll ever understand why we didn't go? Maybe, I said, but I don't think they care enough to try. He nodded, looking out the window. This one was better anyway. He was right. It wasn't loud. It wasn't performative. It didn't come with conditions. It was just better in the way that lets you breathe. A few days later, Lorraine texted me asking if we had plans for Christmas Eve. No pressure, she wrote, but we'd love to have you. Family's coming and I've got a ham with your name on it. I said yes, without overthinking it. Christmas Eve was something I hadn't felt in years. Joy without effort. Lorraine had a stocking for Jonah with his name stitched on it. Inside were small things, socks, snacks, a pair of earbuds he'd been wanting. He stared at it like he couldn't believe someone remembered him that closely. My stocking held a framed photo Lorraine had printed herself. Jonah and me laughing in her backyard from one of the dinners. Underneath, in her handwriting, she'd written, Family isn't who you're born to, it's who shows up when it counts. That frame hangs in our hallway now. A few weeks later, Rachel sent a long message. The tone was colder this time, more final. She said I'd made my choice and shouldn't expect to be included in family things going forward. She said Mom and Dad were heartbroken and hoped I was happy. I read it twice. I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I just felt finished. Because the truth was, I had made my choice. I chose Jonah. I chose peace. I chose not to be used, not to be silenced, not to be handed guilt like it was something I was supposed to carry. I didn't lose my family in a dramatic explosion. I let them go quietly, the same way they'd let me sit in a hospital room and wait. In doing that, I found something I'd never had before. People who didn't measure my worth by what I provided. People who asked how we were and meant it. People who showed up without keeping score. For the first time in my life, I was part of a family I didn't have to earn.